I spent 10 years raising 3 kids I thought were mine, until one night, a single text changed everything. What I discovered next nearly destroyed me. I never imagined I'd find myself doing this, writing out my pain for strangers online to read. It always seemed like something other people did when their lives took a turn they never saw coming. But here I am, sitting alone in what used to be our warm, lively home, trying to wrap my head around how I missed all the signs. A bit about me: my name's Brian, I'm 38. I've been married to my wife Lauren for a decade. We have, or at least I believed we had, 3 amazing kids. Sophie is 7, Max is 5, and our youngest Noah just turned 2. From the outside looking in, we seemed like that ideal family. We lived on a quiet street where neighbors waved, wore coordinated pajamas every Christmas, and never missed a Sunday at church. We really leaned into that classic happy family image. But over the past few months, something started to feel different. It's hard to explain, but there was this constant, uneasy feeling in my chest that I couldn't shake. Lauren had started pulling away. She was glued to her phone more often than not, and she'd come up with reasons to be out without me. I convinced myself she was just overwhelmed. 3 little kids can do that to anyone. I wasn't perfect either. Work had me tied up more than I liked to admit. I thought maybe we were both just stretched thin. It was last Thursday when the cracks really started to show, when the curtain finally got pulled back. I was in the kitchen washing dishes after dinner, while Lauren sat at the dining table like she often did lately, eyes locked on her phone. Then she laughed, really laughed, and it startled me more than it should have. That sound had become so rare. I asked her what was so funny, and without even looking up she said, "Oh, just some dumb meme Sarah sent me." But as she tilted her phone just slightly, I caught a glimpse of the name on the screen. It wasn't Sarah. It said Jason. The name stuck in my mind like a splinter. Jason was someone she used to work with back when she started at her company. I remembered her mentioning him once or twice in those early days, always in passing. I'd never given it much thought. He seemed like one of those distant, forgotten connections. She even told me he'd moved away years ago and they'd lost touch. So what was he doing texting her now? I didn't confront her then, but something shifted inside me. I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, long after she'd gone to bed, I found myself pacing the hallway, heart racing. I hate that I did it, but I reached for her phone while she slept. I kept telling myself I needed peace of mind, but what I found tore me apart. Their texts were far from casual. They were playful, flirtatious, layered with private jokes I'd never heard before. And then, the message that hit me like a punch to the gut. A photo of our son Noah grinning up at the camera with her message underneath, "He's starting to look more and more like you." I couldn't catch my breath. My thoughts were spiraling, trying to grab onto something that made sense. Why would she send Jason a picture of Noah with a message like that? I kept telling myself it had to be a weird joke, something I was misreading. But in my gut, I knew. I knew that everything I thought was solid in my life was about to crumble in ways I wasn't prepared for. I didn't say a word to her that night. Instead, I sat there in the dark, phone in hand, staring at those messages like they held the key to the past 10 years. And in a way they did. My mind kept rewinding. Those late nights she claimed were for work, those sudden weekend visits to see her sister. Even last year on my birthday when she barely looked up from her phone. All the signs were there. I just hadn't wanted to see them. Sleep never came that night. I laid next to her, eyes wide open, listening to her breathe, wondering who she really was. How long had this been happening? Was Jason the only one? And the thought that kept ripping me apart, could it be that none of the kids were actually mine? It felt like the ground beneath me had disappeared. Everything I believed in, everything I'd built my world around, was spinning out of control. And the most terrifying part? I had no idea how to slow it down, let alone stop it. The next morning I felt like I was moving through molasses. My body had technically rested, but my mind hadn't stopped spinning for a second. I watched Lauren go through the usual motions, making sandwiches for the kids' lunches, fixing her hair in the mirror, planting kisses on each of their foreheads like everything was perfectly normal. Like she was still that loving, present mother I once admired. But something had shifted. I couldn't see her the same way anymore. Every little gesture felt like it was part of a performance. I sat there quietly, holding in a storm. I wanted to blurt it out, to just ask her, "Who is Jason really?" But I didn't. I forced myself to play along, letting her kiss me on the cheek before she walked out the door, leaving me standing there in silence while everything inside me screamed. I couldn't pretend anymore. After dropping the kids off at school, I pulled over and called in sick to work. There was no way I could concentrate, not after what I'd uncovered. I drove straight to my brother Matt's place. He's always been the one I go to when things get messy. He's got this way of cutting through the noise. Still, I hadn't told him much yet. Honestly, it's humiliating. To even say it out loud, that your wife might be stepping out on you while you're playing the part of the oblivious husband. When I walked in, he gave me a once-over and said, "Man, you look rough. You sick or just been hit with a freight train?" I shook my head, unsure how to start. "I don't even know where to begin," I muttered, rubbing the back of my neck. "I think Lauren's been cheating on me." His face dropped. "What? No way. You guys? You've been solid for years. You've got the kids, the house. Are you sure?" I didn't let him finish. "I'm not sure about anything anymore. But I saw messages, texts between her and this guy she used to work with, Jason. And she sent him a picture of Noah. Told him he's starting to look more and more like him." Even just saying it out loud made it feel more real and more painful. Matt leaned back slowly, his expression shifting from shock to something heavier. "Hold on. You're saying she's been messaging this guy, and she's hinting that Noah might not even be yours?" I nodded, my throat tight. "Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying." He sat quiet for a moment like he was trying to digest it. "Look, man, don't jump to conclusions just yet. You need to have that conversation. You need answers. But if this is what it looks like, you've got to face it. You can't keep living in this fog." That talk with Matt lit something inside me. I couldn't sit on this any longer, couldn't keep pacing the house while my mind ran in circles, feeding on doubt and dread. I needed answers. Real ones. And to get those, I had to know how far this had actually gone. So I started digging. Whenever Lauren wasn't paying attention, I went through her phone again. I searched her email, combed through her social media, anywhere I could find a trace of the truth. And the more I uncovered, the worse it got. The messages with Jason weren't recent. They went back years. Full of flirtation, private jokes, late-night confessions. "I miss you," she wrote more than once. And it wasn't just Noah she talked about, there were references to Sophie and Max too. Things like, "They have your smile," or, "Wish things had turned out differently." Then came the gut punch. Hotel bookings. She'd taken trips I thought were for work, times when I'd stayed home playing super dad. But now it was clear, those trips weren't solo. Jason had been with her. My whole body went numb. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the proof, and I could barely hear anything over the thundering in my chest. The weight of it all was unbearable. I needed the truth. And I knew the only way to get it was to confront her head-on. That night, once the kids were asleep and the house was quiet, I sat Lauren down in the living room. My heart was in my throat, but I forced myself to speak. "Lauren," I began, voice rough. "We need to talk." She looked up, her expression calm, maybe a little guarded. "Okay. What's going on?" "I know," I said, locking eyes with her. My tone was steady, but my insides were churning. Her eyebrows drew together. "Know what?" "I know about Jason. The texts. The photos. The hotel rooms," I said, each word gaining strength. "I don't even know if our kids are mine." She froze, the color draining from her face. For a few seconds she just stared at me. Then her jaw tightened, and she crossed her arms like she was preparing to defend herself. "You've been going through my phone?" she said, voice shaky but sharp. I had no choice. I snapped. "You've been lying to me for who knows how long. I'm your husband. And now I'm questioning if those 3 little faces upstairs are even mine." Her mouth quivered like she was about to break down, but instead she turned cold. "This is ridiculous, Brian. You're taking this way too far. The kids are yours. Jason and I, we had a bond, sure, but it wasn't physical. It was just emotional. I was lonely. You were always caught up in work, with everything but me." "An emotional affair?" I said, laughing bitterly. "That's what you're calling it? After everything I saw? You expect me to believe it never got physical?" She looked down at the floor. That pause, it told me everything. She didn't need to say a word. Her silence said more than any confession could. It felt like the ground vanished beneath me. Her silence said it all, she didn't even try to deny it. That quiet between us was heavier than any shouting match. It was true. She had been with him. And now, the horrifying possibility that the children I'd raised, loved, and built my life around, might not even be mine? It hit me like a wave I couldn't stand up against. "How long?" I asked, barely managing to push the words past my dry throat. She didn't answer right away. Just stood there, staring at the floor like it might swallow her up. Her fingers were shaking, her breath unsteady. Then, finally, almost like she didn't want to hear it herself, she said, "It started 8 years ago." 8 years. I dropped onto the couch like someone had taken the wind out of my lungs. 8 years. I echoed, my voice hollow. "You've been lying to me all this time?" She moved toward me, her hand reaching out like she could fix this with a touch. I pulled back instinctively. Don't. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice barely holding together. It wasn't supposed to go this far, Brian. I was lonely, things got complicated. I didn't know how to stop. Don't feed me that, I snapped, cutting her off. 8 years isn't a mistake. It's a second life. You didn't just lie to me, you lied to the kids. You blew our whole family apart and now you're standing there like this is some kind of misunderstanding. She sat across from me, her face streaked with tears, but I couldn't feel any pity. Not anymore. I was drowning in something too bitter to allow it. After a long silence, I said what had been clawing at the edge of my mind for days. I need to know, are they mine? She didn't speak. She just started crying harder, shaking her head like she couldn't even say the words. That was the breaking point. The last bit of hope I'd been clinging to, gone. I'm getting a paternity test, I said, standing up. My voice didn't even shake. It was cold, flat, final. If they're not mine, I honestly don't know what I'll do. The days that followed were a haze. I went through the motions like a robot, getting the kids ready, showing up for work, pretending to be okay, but inside I was unraveling. The kids had no clue what was happening. All they knew was that Dad seemed off, and Mom spent a lot of time behind a closed door, crying. I couldn't bring myself to say a word to them. How do you even begin to tell your children that everything they've known might be built on a lie? I made the appointment for the paternity test the very next morning. Lauren didn't argue. In fact, she didn't say much at all. She walked around like a ghost, shell-shocked, quiet, but I didn't have it in me to care. Not after what she put us through. Taking the kids to the clinic felt like something out of a dream I couldn't wake up from. Sophie, Max, and Noah sat in the back seat, chatting and giggling, heads buried in their tablets. They had no idea their dad was driving them to find out whether he was actually their dad. When they asked why we were going to the doctor, I forced a smile and told them it was just a checkup. They accepted it without a second thought. The tests were quick. Just a few swabs and signatures. The nurse told me it would take a week to get the results. 1 week. 7 days of torture. I had no idea how I'd make it through. It felt like I was carrying a boulder on my chest, trying to breathe underwater. Every time I looked at those kids, at Sophie's curious grin, Max's loud, contagious laugh, and Noah's bright eyes, I questioned everything. Was I really their father? Or had I just been standing in for someone else all along? I tried to keep things normal, but nothing felt real anymore. I couldn't even be in the same room as Lauren. Anytime our eyes met, all I could see were the secrets and deception. I started sleeping on the couch. We barely spoke. It was like we were strangers sharing a roof, waiting for something to snap. On the 4th night, I had this dream, one of those that feels too real, like your mind's trying to tell you something you've been avoiding. I was standing on the edge of a cliff, wind howling around me, nothing but pitch black below. Behind me, I could hear Lauren calling my name, her voice echoing through the wind. But I didn't turn around. I just stood there, staring into the darkness, feeling it pull at me like it wanted to swallow me whole. I woke up drenched in sweat, heart racing, chest tight. That dream stuck with me. It was like my subconscious had finally said enough. I couldn't wait anymore. The next morning I called the clinic. I tried to keep my voice steady, but desperation crept in. I asked if there was any way, any possible way, to get the results faster. The woman on the other end of the line was polite, soft-spoken, but her answer felt like a punch to the gut. I'm really sorry, sir. These tests follow a process. You'll have your results by the end of the week. That week felt like an eternity. I was on edge, my nerves stretched thin. Lauren and I barely spoke, and when we did, it was nothing more than the bare minimum. Talk about school pickups, dinner, bedtime. She didn't bring up the test, and I didn't volunteer anything. She knew what was coming. So did I. But the not knowing, it was unbearable. I'd catch myself watching the kids as they played or sat at the table drawing pictures, and my chest would ache. All those memories, the birthdays, the scraped knees, the bedtime hugs, were they mine? Or had I just been living someone else's life, raising someone else's children? Then Friday came. I left work early. I couldn't focus anyway. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw the email notification on my phone. It was from the clinic. I sat in the car, staring at the screen. I don't know how long I was there. Part of me wanted to throw the phone out the window and drive until everything behind me disappeared. But I couldn't hide from it. I had to know. My fingers were shaking as I tapped it open. Sophie, not a biological match. Max, not a biological match. Noah, not a biological match. I felt everything inside me go still. Like my heart had just stopped mid-beat. All 3. Not one of them was mine. For a second, it felt like the world just tilted on its axis. I had to grab onto the car door to steady myself, my legs suddenly too weak to hold me up. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped the phone. It hit the pavement with a dull clatter and I just stared at it. Like it didn't matter anymore. Because in that moment nothing did. 10 years of my life, our marriage, those kids I had tucked in every night, cheered on at soccer games, rocked to sleep, it was all built on a lie. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen. Long enough for the numbness to settle deep into my bones. When I finally walked into the house, everything was quiet. Too quiet. Lauren was in the kitchen and the kids must have been upstairs, probably laughing, completely unaware that their dad's heart had just been torn to pieces. She looked up the moment I walked in. Her face was pale and she was drying her hands with a towel, like she'd been standing there waiting. Her eyes met mine and I saw it, she already knew. "You got the results, didn't you?" she whispered. I nodded. I couldn't speak. The weight of it all had crushed whatever words I had left. She took a step closer, her eyes brimming. "Brian, please let me explain." "Don't." My voice broke, but I didn't try to hide it. "Just, don't." We stood there in silence, that awful kind that says more than shouting ever could. She looked like she wanted to say something else, but I turned away. I couldn't bear to hear another excuse. "Not now." "I have to get out of here," I muttered, heading for the front door. "Brian, please," she said, reaching out, her voice cracked and pleading. But I didn't stop. I grabbed my keys off the hook and left. The door slammed behind me and I drove off without a destination. Just away from her, away from the house, away from the life I no longer recognized. I didn't have a plan. I just drove, letting the road pull me wherever it wanted. My head was a storm of emotions, rage, grief, confusion, all spinning around memories I couldn't shake. I kept seeing their faces. The day each of them was born. The way I'd held them for the first time, thinking they were mine. Feeling that rush of love that hits you like a wave and changes you forever. But they weren't mine. Eventually, I found myself pulling into a familiar spot, a small park on the edge of town. We used to bring the kids here when they were little. Back when I thought we were just a happy, tired, normal family. It was quiet now, completely empty. I walked over to a bench facing the playground and sat down. The swings creaked a little in the breeze. The slide still had that little dent from when Max fell off his scooter and bumped into it. I stared at all of it, every piece of that playground tied to a memory that now felt like someone else's life. And the worst part? I missed them. Even now. Even knowing the truth. I must have sat there for hours, numb and still, just watching shadows stretch across the grass. Then my phone buzzed. It was Matt. "Hey man. You okay?" he asked. "Lauren called me. She's worried." I let out a bitter laugh. "Worried about me? That's rich. Brian, did you get the results?" I didn't answer right away. My throat felt tight. Then I said it. The words I'd been trying not to say out loud. None of them, Matt. Not a single one. There was a long silence. "Oh man. I don't even know what to say. I'm so sorry." I closed my eyes as the tears finally slipped free. What do I do now? I spent 10 years loving those kids. Raising them. Believing they were mine. How do I just let that go? How do I keep going after this? It felt like the world suddenly shifted beneath me. I had to grip the edge of the car door just to stay upright, my legs buckling under the weight of what I'd just read. My hands trembled so hard the phone slipped from my grip, clattering against the driveway. I didn't bother picking it up. In that moment, nothing seemed to matter anymore. 10 years, 10 full years of my life, my marriage, and those 3 little souls I thought I was guiding through life. It was all a lie. I don't remember how long I stood there. Just that time seemed to stop. I was frozen in place, letting the numbness sink in, crawl into every part of me until it felt like I wasn't even real anymore. When I finally walked through the door, the house was still. Too still. The kind of quiet that presses on your ears. Lauren was in the kitchen, wiping her hands with a towel, like she'd been standing there just waiting for me to walk in. She turned the moment she saw me. Her face was pale, her eyes searching mine, already knowing. "You read the results, didn't you?" she asked, barely above a whisper. I gave a small nod. I couldn't speak. My throat felt like it had been crushed under the weight of what I now knew. She took a small step toward me, tears pooling in her eyes. "Brian, just let me try to explain." "Don't." My voice cracked, but I didn't care. "Please, just don't." The silence that followed was suffocating. She stood there, motionless, lips parted like she was still holding something back. But I turned away. I couldn't stand to hear another word. Not one more excuse, not one more lie. "I need to get out of here," I muttered, already moving toward the door. "Brian, wait," she called after me, her voice raw. But I didn't wait. I grabbed my keys from the hook and stepped outside. The door slammed behind me like a final exhale and I drove off, not knowing where I was going, just knowing I couldn't stay there. Not in that house. Not with her. Not after this. Eventually, I made my way back home. I didn't even know what time it was, just that the sky was dark and the streets were empty. The house was quiet when I walked through the door. The living room lights were off, but I could hear soft voices drifting down from upstairs. Lauren was reading to the kids. Her voice was gentle, familiar. The same voice that used to calm me after a long day. The same voice I once trusted without question. It used to be my thing, story time. I used to sit with them every night, doing the voices, letting them pile into my lap as they giggled and begged for just one more page. They used to be my peace. Now it felt like a knife straight through my chest. I stood at the bottom of the stairs and just listened. Their laughter floated down the hall like nothing had changed. For them, it hadn't. They had no idea the ground beneath their world was about to give way. Lauren came down a few minutes later. Her face was drawn, her eyes swollen and red. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. When she saw me standing there, she froze, like she wasn't sure if she should speak or disappear into the shadows. "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, even though I could feel the anger burning under my skin. She gave a small nod, barely meeting my eyes. "I know." We sat in the kitchen. The room felt too quiet, too small, like the walls themselves were bracing for what was coming. Neither of us said anything for a while. She was waiting for me to speak and I was trying to figure out where to even start. How do you talk about something that's shattered every part of your life? "Why?" I finally asked, my voice raw. "Why did you do this? Why didn't you tell me the truth?" Her hands were shaking as she tried to steady herself. "I was terrified, Brian. I was young. I made mistakes, horrible mistakes. When I found out I was pregnant with Sophie, I didn't know. I wasn't sure if she was yours or Jason's. But by then we were already married and I couldn't say it. Then Max came, then Noah. And every time I thought about telling you, I couldn't do it. I didn't want to hurt you." "Didn't want to hurt me?" I said, laughing bitterly. "You think keeping this from me for 8 years didn't destroy me? You think I didn't deserve to know the truth?" "I know," she whispered, tears falling freely now. "I know I should have told you. I was selfish, Brian. I was scared. I didn't want to lose everything." I stood up, pacing the kitchen, trying to keep my fists from clenching. "You already lost me the moment you decided to lie. And now what? What am I supposed to do with all of this? What happens now?" She didn't respond right away. Just stared down at her hands like she couldn't bear to look at me. Then in a broken voice she finally said, "I don't know. But the kids, they need you, Brian. They love you. You're their dad. In every way that matters." Her words echoed in my mind long after she said them. "You're their father." I'd heard that before. Matt had said it too. And over the past few days I tried repeating it to myself like a mantra, hoping it would sink in, hoping it would somehow make things feel right again. But standing there, staring at the woman who had torn the floor out from under me, I didn't know what to believe anymore. "I don't know if I can do this," I said, dragging my hands through my hair. "I don't know if I can stay here and pretend like this is normal, Lauren. I look at you and all I feel is like I've been punched in the gut." She wiped her face with the sleeve of her shirt, her eyes red and tired. "I get it," she said softly. "I'll go. I'll give you space. But please, Brian, don't take this out on the kids. They love you. You're the only dad they've ever known." Her words hit me hard. But the anger inside me hadn't burned out yet. It was still simmering, still twisting in my chest. "This isn't about punishing them," I said, my voice tight. "This is about the fact that everything I believed in was fake. I don't even know what's real anymore. I need to figure that out." She stood slowly, hesitating like she didn't know if she should say anything else. Then she stepped a little closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Take the time you need. I'll stay at my sister's for now. But please, please don't walk away from them. Don't walk away from us." I couldn't say anything back. I just watched in silence as she moved through the house, packing a small bag, her shoulders slumped under the weight of everything she'd done. When she finally left, the door clicked shut behind her, and the silence that followed felt louder than anything. I sat down on the couch, my eyes drifting to the photos on the wall, snapshots of birthdays, holidays, silly moments frozen in time. Pictures of a life I thought I understood. Pictures of a family I thought was mine. But now I wasn't so sure it ever was. That first night without Lauren in the house felt off. Everything was quieter. But it wasn't just the silence that unsettled me, it was the weight of everything I was carrying. The questions that wouldn't stop running laps in my head. The grief that sat heavy in my chest like a boulder I couldn't move. The kids didn't know a thing yet. They still came running up to me with their bedtime hugs, still asked me to read to them, still told me stories about school and cartoons. I tucked them in, kissed their foreheads, smiled like I wasn't falling apart. And when the lights went out and their breathing softened into sleep, I sat there. Just sat and watched them, bathed in the soft glow of the nightlight. I love them. God, I love those kids. That hadn't changed. No DNA test in the world could erase the moments we'd shared or the bond we'd built. But the betrayal, it still burned. And I didn't know how to hold both feelings at once. It hurt in ways I didn't even know I could hurt. Downstairs, I poured myself a drink and sat in the kitchen without turning on the lights. The quiet wasn't comforting, it was suffocating. I looked around at the space we'd filled with years of memories. First birthday balloons. Morning pancake messes. Arguments. Laughter. It was all still here. But it felt like I didn't belong in it anymore. The next morning the phone rang. It was Lauren. I didn't have the strength to speak to her yet, so I handed the phone to Sophie. She lit up, chatting away about the movie we'd watched and how Max had spilled popcorn everywhere. I stood off to the side, listening, my stomach in knots. I wanted to be okay. I just wasn't. After breakfast, I stared at my reflection in the hallway mirror for a long time. I didn't recognize the man looking back. That's when I knew I couldn't do this on my own. I picked up the phone and called a therapist, something I never thought I'd do. I didn't have a clear reason or a plan. I just knew I was lost and I needed help figuring out how to keep going. A week later, I found myself sitting across from a therapist, the clock ticking softly in the quiet room as I tried to make sense of everything that had unraveled in my life. I laid it all out, about Lauren, about Jason, about the paternity test that flipped my world upside down. I don't even know who I am anymore, I confessed, my voice breaking under the strain. I've been their dad their whole lives, but now, I'm not. Not really. And I don't know what to do with that. She listened without interrupting, letting the silence stretch for a moment before leaning forward slightly, her tone gentle but steady. Brian, being a father isn't limited to genetics. It's about the love you give, the way you've shown up every day. Those children see you as their dad because that's exactly what you've been, present, devoted, real. That doesn't disappear because of a test result. I nodded, but the words didn't settle right away. They made sense, but the pain still sat heavy in my chest. But how do I live with that knowledge? How do I sit across the dinner table, look into their eyes, and not see the lie behind it all? How do I not think about the fact that I'm not their real father? The therapist gave me this steady, understanding look. Her voice was calm, but there was weight behind it. It's going to take time, Brian. There's no magic fix here. What you're feeling, the betrayal, the pain, it's valid. It's going to take time to process all of it. But the bond you've built with those kids? That's real too. That love you've poured into them over the years, it didn't vanish just because of a DNA test. And their love for you? That hasn't changed. I leaned back in the chair, her words hanging in the air. I wanted to believe them. I really did. But it still felt like every time I thought of those kids, something inside me cracked. I loved them more than anything, but that love was tangled now, wrapped in this tight knot of grief and confusion. I didn't know how to untangle it, how to separate what was real from what wasn't. Then, in a quieter voice, I asked what I had been avoiding. What about Lauren? What am I supposed to do about her? I can't even look at her without feeling completely broken. She didn't rush her answer. That's something only you can decide, she said gently. You're not obligated to figure it out today, or tomorrow. Take the time you need to understand what you want, what you can live with. Right now, your focus should be on healing. Everything else will come with time. I left that session feeling, not fixed, but like I had a direction. Like I wasn't totally adrift anymore. There was still a long road ahead, but at least I could see the road. When I walked through the front door, the house was buzzing. Max and Noah were chasing each other down the hallway, and Sophie came barreling toward me with that wide, unfiltered grin. Dad, you said we could bake cookies today. Can we? Please? That word, Dad, landed in my chest like a punch and a hug at the same time. It hurt, but it also reminded me why I was still standing. I looked down at her, and despite everything, I felt that same old warmth stir inside me. I forced a smile, but it was real. Yeah, I said softly. Let's do it. That afternoon, as the kids and I stood around the kitchen mixing cookie dough, I caught myself watching them more closely than ever. Sophie, determined and precise, insisted on measuring everything herself. Max, with flour on his nose and that ever-present gleam in his eye, kept sneaking bits of dough when he thought I wasn't looking. And Noah, full of questions, wanted to know exactly how long it would take before the cookies were ready to eat. They were everything to me. They always had been. And no test, no paperwork, no twist of fate could undo the years we'd spent together. I had been their father in the ways that counted, in scraped knees, school plays, bedtime hugs. But it still hurt. Every time one of them said, "Dad," it hit me like a whisper of grief. Not because I didn't want to hear it, but because I did. Because I wasn't sure if I deserved to. Was I lying to them by not telling them the truth? Was I protecting them, or just postponing their pain? I didn't have the answers. I just knew I couldn't make that call right now. That night, after they were asleep, the house finally quiet, my phone buzzed. Lauren's name lit up the screen. My stomach turned just seeing it. I stared at it, debating. I wasn't ready, but part of me knew I had to face her eventually. I answered, my voice flat. "What is it, Lauren?" There was silence for a second, then her voice came through, shaking. "Brian, I'm sorry. I don't even have the right words. I've ruined everything. I know I have. And I don't know how to fix it." I held the phone tight, forcing myself to stay calm. "You're right. You broke something we can't just put back together. But this isn't about us anymore. It's about the kids. They're the ones caught in the middle of this mess." "I know," she whispered. "That's why I'm willing to do anything. I don't know how to make it right, but I'll try. If there's any chance, any at all, that we can get through this, I want to try." I let out a bitter laugh. "You want to fix it? You kept this secret for 8 years. You watched me raise those kids like they were mine. You let me believe in a life that wasn't real. How do you fix that, Lauren? How do you make that right?" She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice cracked. "I don't know. But if you're willing to try, I'll be here. I'll do whatever it takes." I sat there in the dark, phone still in hand, staring at the wall while her words echoed in my head. Was I willing to try? Could I really find it in me to move forward after everything? To look at her and not see the betrayal? "I don't know if I can," I said finally, my voice low and tired. "This isn't just about forgiving you, Lauren. It's about learning how to live with it. With the truth. And right now, I don't know how to do that." She didn't push. Her voice came back soft and fragile. "I understand. I'm not asking you to forgive me overnight. I love you, Brian. I love this family. I know I've done horrible things, but I want to fix it. For them. For all of us." A part of me wanted to believe her, but another part, the part that had watched everything unravel, couldn't be sure anymore. "You say you love me," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady, "but you should have thought about that when you cheated. When you lied to my face for 8 years. I'll do what I need to for the kids, but as for us..." I shook my head even though she couldn't see it. "I don't know if I can ever see you the same way again." She started crying on the other end. That broken kind of sobbing that used to pull at my heart. And yeah, part of me still felt that old instinct to comfort her. But I reminded myself she did this. She is the reason we're here. "We'll figure something out," I said eventually, the weight of it all pressing down on me. "But right now I need space. The kids need routine, something stable. You can stay at your sister's place for now. I'll take care of things here." "Okay," she whispered, her voice barely holding together. "I'll give you the time. Just, thank you for not walking away from them." We hung up and I just sat there for a long while, staring at the blank screen in my hand. It felt like my whole world had caved in, and I was the one left holding up the rubble. I didn't know if I'd ever be able to forgive her, or if there was even anything left between us to rebuild. But one thing was certain, the kids weren't going to pay for her choices. They were innocent in all of this. And no matter what came next, I was going to be there for them. Because that's what a father does. The days that followed blurred together. With Lauren staying at her sister's, I took over everything: meals, bedtime, school drop-offs, middle-of-the-night wake-ups. It was exhausting, no question. But oddly enough, being around the kids grounded me. They didn't know the full truth and I wasn't ready to tell them, but just having them near, laughing, fighting, needing me, it gave me something solid to hold on to. Something real. Saturday came and I took them to the park. The same park I'd gone to the day I got the test results. Now I was back there, only this time I was the one pushing Noah on the swing, watching Sophie and Max chase each other across the grass. For a brief moment it felt like things might actually be okay. Then Sophie stopped mid-run and turned to me. "Dad, how come Mom's not coming home?" The question hit me like a freight train. I froze, my hands gripping the swing chains just a little tighter as Noah giggled, completely unaware of the shift in energy. Sophie looked up at me with that same curious, innocent stare she always had, and Max stood off to the side, suddenly quiet. I tried to steady my breath. "She's staying with Aunt Melissa for a little while," I said gently. Sophie's brows knit together. What? Did you guys fight? I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Yeah, we did. But it's nothing you need to worry about. Sometimes grown-ups have to work through hard things and we just need a little space. Her lip trembled. Are you getting a divorce? That word felt like a blade. I hadn't even let myself fully say it out loud yet, and now here it was, coming from my daughter's mouth. I don't know, I answered honestly, crouching down beside her. I really don't. But no matter what happens, your mom and I both love you very much. That will never change, okay? Max stepped closer, his voice smaller than usual. Are you okay, Dad? I looked at him, at both of them, and forced a smile that I hoped didn't look as strained as it felt. I'm okay, buddy. I'm just figuring things out right now. But I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I promise. The rest of the day drifted by in a fog. I got the kids home, fed them dinner, and tucked them into bed like I always did. But my mind wasn't there, not really. I kept hearing Sophie's question in my head. Are you getting a divorce? I didn't have an answer. Truthfully, I wasn't sure if I ever would. Could I stay married to Lauren after everything? Could I rebuild trust when the foundation had been torn apart? I didn't know. But the kids, they needed something solid. Something they could count on. And I didn't want to be the one who tore apart what little security they had left. Later that night, I sat on the couch, staring up at the family photo on the wall. The five of us, frozen in time, standing on a beach with sunburned cheeks and wide smiles. I remembered that trip like it was yesterday, how happy I'd felt, how in love I thought we were. The kids had been so carefree, so full of laughter. Looking at it now, it felt like I was staring into a stranger's life. Someone else's memory. Then the phone rang. Lauren's name lit up the screen again. I hesitated, debating whether I had the energy to hear her voice. But I answered. Brian? She said softly, like she was afraid I might hang up. I know you said you needed space and I get that. But I was wondering if I could see the kids tomorrow. Just for a few hours. I closed my eyes, taking a long breath. Yeah, I said, voice low. That's fine. You can see them. I miss them so much, she whispered. And I miss you. I didn't say anything to that. I couldn't. The words didn't feel real anymore. I'll drop them off at Melissa's tomorrow. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you. When we hung up, I sat there in the stillness, the house dark around me. My thoughts spiraled, searching for something to hold on to. But I just felt lost. Like I was floating in the wreckage of a life I no longer recognized. The next day, I stood across from Lauren, and for the first time in weeks, my mind felt clear. The decision I'd been circling for what felt like forever had finally settled in my chest like something solid. Something final. I've made my decision, I said, my voice steady, anchored by the resolve I hadn't had until now. She looked up at me from the chair, her face pale, eyes already glassy with tears she'd been holding back since I walked in. I didn't flinch. I'm filing for divorce. She opened her mouth to respond, but I raised a hand. No. I don't need more apologies. No more justifications. It's over, Lauren. Whatever was left between us died the moment you decided to lie to me, not once but for 8 straight years. You made your choice every time you looked me in the eye and let me believe I was their father. The silence between us was heavy, but I wasn't finished. I had to get it all out. But the kids. I took a step closer. They're mine. Maybe not by blood, but in every way that counts, they're mine. I've been there. I've raised them. I've loved them. And I'll keep loving them because that's what a father does. And let's be honest, your lover? He's not stepping up. He's not interested in being any kind of father. He's a ghost. Her face crumpled, tears spilling now, but I didn't feel anything. No pity. No pull. You're having his baby, but what has he done for the ones you already have? Nothing. Because he's just like you, a coward who runs when things get hard. I'm sorry, Brian, she whispered, barely audible. I don't care, I said flatly. Live however you want. Be with him, be alone, do whatever. But those kids, they're staying with me. I won't let them carry the weight of your mistakes. I'll give them the kind of life they deserve, steady, safe, honest. She tried to speak again, but I was already done. This conversation is over. I've got nothing left for you. You wrecked our marriage, but I'll be damned if I let you wreck those kids too. I looked her dead in the eye, calm but unwavering. This is the last time we speak about it. I'm moving on. The kids and I will be okay. You can live with the choices you made. And with that, I walked out. I didn't look back. From that moment forward, my life had a new direction. One built on truth, on love, on protecting the only part of this mess that still mattered. My kids. The ones I'd raised, the ones I would always show up for no matter what. As for Lauren, she was free to live in the wreckage she created. And me? I was finally free too. Free to rebuild, on my own terms.